Peace and blessings, family. This is your boy Gerald. It is Monday, Columbus Day here in the United States. For those who are off today, enjoy your holiday. For those that the beat don't stop, responsibility is still there. Shout out to you. Because turn that up a little bit, while we, while some are afforded the opportunity to take this day off, there are some that must hold it down and must continue to hold down what's important. Someone must be there to leave the light on, so to speak, or tow the rope. Okay, we back on there. All of a sudden, I was shut down. But it's all right because that's what truth does. Sometimes truth will stop you dead in your tracks. Sometimes truth will cause you to look at things that may have been apparent the whole time, but you just were not in that space where you wished to deal. But this is something that I've been speaking subtly about, but I've been trying to educate myself in the same process because I always wanted to know, especially now in our era, 2018, soon to be 2019. You blink twice, we're in a new year, a new season. Well, you're already on the last season of 2018, which is the harvest. 2019 will be the survey, the sustainment, the planting, and seeds will be planted. And those seeds might be your intent. That might be the moment that you decide to say, you know what? I've been marinating this in my mind, in my spirit for a long time. And there's no excuses now. This is the moment that I'm going to actually put action behind my thought. And that's okay because you are stepping on your foundation. But let me not, hold on.
The door.
Sorry about that, y'all. Technical difficulty. But we back. One of the things in the back of my mind that I've noticed in the last 20 years, indirectly, was how certain things have influence. They have the lane, so to speak, and doors are opened. And in those doors, there are certain people, certain imageries, certain narratives being propped up and supported. And then for those who are here in the United States and those who are not, you're aware that last week there was the Senate hearing for the nominated Supreme Court justice. And I'm going to speak on that to set up my main reason for this video. So, if you don't know, our president, Commander-in-Chief, Donald J. Trump, nominated a new Supreme Court justice because within the last, not even a year, we've had a shuffling in the Supreme Court judges sitting where one decided to retire. They were done. So this will afford the opportunity for another Supreme Court justice to take that position. And then you have people that feel a certain kind of way because of the position that possibly this nominee may have. In turn, the nominee, Judge Kavanaugh, had to go through review, which in turn opened up his past or prospective past. And a lot of questions were asked, as well as people were called to give their account. One was a woman by the name of Dr. Ford. And per what the media put out, she wanted to be anonymous and say, hey, let's look at this a little deeper before you make that decision. And then that all opened the floodgates for countless questions. But in our government, we have what we call checks and balances. But you know what I saw while all this was going on? Number one, if you live in the United States, we paid our taxes for that committee, for that whole review. And in turn, the media, no matter what their position was, they benefited from it. But you know what I also saw? I saw a whole lot of anger. I saw a lot of emotional lines being drawn, as well as I saw a lot of energy for those who were impartial to decide. But the one thing that really just stopped me in my tracks was the protesting that was going on. There was a sign, and that sign said, radically feminized now. I don't know if that was validation for a mindset that I may have been pondering, or it was coincidence, which I believe nothing is coincidence. Everything divinely happens. It just depends on if you're willing to see it, even if that means that your position is to be silent, to be humble, but to be aware the whole time. So it made me wonder, with all the energy being put out, with all the narrative being given, the question that I've had on my spirit for the last 6 months was this. Matter of fact, I kind of spoke on it on a video some time ago. And the question was, what's the difference between being brainwashed and being radicalized? And I've been searching, and I've been trying to find the difference between the two. And I realized that the commonality between both is you must have a passion. But to have a passion, you must first acknowledge its presence inside yourself. Just like an onion. As you know that an onion gives out a distinct aroma. The more you pull the layers back, the stronger its incandescence comes out. The more its fragrance comes out. And what does it do? It causes a reaction to those who are in the midst of that onion. But it seems like the closer we try to get to the core, the more and more we want to sidestep what is being revealed. Now, I've always questioned why. So many people are angry because it is blatant that we are living in a world that narcissism, sociopathic behaviors, schizophrenic agendas are being celebrated, and morality is not being protected. And then the more I pondered, the more it was evident that what I was seeing. And the commonality was that anger was being spawned by fear. You know, fear. Finally, everything's a reality. And you started to see people unified, almost in the manner of a mob. You know, a lot of y'all know what I'm talking about. That mob justice. We don't want to go by what is regulated, what is considered structure. We want to do what we want to do when we want to do it without any recourse. And I saw that with this potential nomination, which per what the media is revealing is he's going to be the next guy. He's going to be the next Supreme Court justice. And that is a position for life. So that in itself is going to have an impact on you, me, and your children. Now, for some of y'all, your position may be it don't matter. It ain't got nothing to do with my light bill getting paid, Gerald. It ain't got nothing to do with my day to day, but actually it does. It does. Now it's going to be more or less of wait and see. But we don't talk about that now, do we? We don't have that discussion because it's too real. And that's why that's how some will be surprised. Because we are basically living in the era of waiting for the other shoe to drop. So when you see it, own it. Now, I'm saying that because let's look at brainwashing. How is somebody brainwashed? First, they have to be, how I can say, vulnerable to a degree that influence, positive or negative, can cause them to be inspired. But if you look at our social narrative today, bad behavior is being celebrated. It is being catapulted. It is being propped up on a pedestal. So it made me think a little deeper. We go by history. For those who remember historically reading about World War One and the Japanese, and they had an elite pilots called the kamikaze. And the kamikaze based their development on their spiritual belief system, but it was also nurtured to have a certain mindset. And you've seen this again through time in regards to, unfortunately, with the known bombings and terroristic behaviors that's been playing out throughout the world. But you know what you don't see? You don't see that same symbolism or labeling done on our own soil. Why is that? Why is it that we can't call a spade a spade? What are we afraid of? If it looks like a dog, sounds like a dog, it is a dog. You base it off of the behavior and the traits that identify it to be classified. But why aren't we having those conversations? If anything, why are we not teaching our children that this is what needs to be done? This is what needs to be protected. And this is something that is unbecoming. So you understand that a divided house cannot stand. You do understand that, right? That will never change. So until we decide to come together, sit down at that table, have that discussion, how can you learn to appreciate or learn something new? I'm going to tell you why. Because some people have love and commitment to their pain. They have an undying loyalty to their fear too, because that is all they know. But they won't acknowledge that to be. Why? Because it makes them step out of their comfort zone to have a possible different perspective. You may know someone, you may have had this apply to yourself, where you may have had a certain position, and all of a sudden, because there was something that you did not know, it changed everything about it. That is why you hear in the legal system, not knowing the laws does not give you the excuse not knowing it. That is why now, socially, everything is being force-fed and put out there. Why? Because you can't turn around and say, well, you know what? I did not know. Everything's at the means of a keystroke nowadays. Even your family history. So why are you allowing someone to dictate the narrative when you are supposed to be the one to do the research yourself? Now, I'm not trying to sound drown out, because I know that some of y'all are going to see this and you're going to feel a certain kind of way. And you're entitled to it. But I also know that you can't complain about something that's broken if you're not willing to acknowledge it is broken. So I saw this whole position of unification of numbers. What I mean by that, I mean by people. We can go back 5 years, and different grassroots organizations sprung up. Now, y'all know you can't have a platform for nothing unless there's some type of funding going on. The more funding you get, the louder your voice becomes. And you turn around, pick an organization, and I guarantee you're going to find some funding behind it. That's just like having a balloon with no air. But the agenda is to get it to fly. Why do you want to get it to fly? Because you want it to be seen. You want to be able to claim that accomplishment. But what if that accomplishment is nothing but shame, disrespect, denial, and inner turmoil? What about that? So I had people ask me, well, what about before that? It was about a TV celebrity icon, Bill Cosby, and his conviction. Well, and I spoke on it, and I said, well, my thing is, you can't have it both ways. And what I mean by that is, you can't take a social position that was condoned 35 plus years and then try to correct it 35 years back when the correction should have been done back then? Because that will undermine everything that we know as a society. It's just, you know how they say, you're getting punished not for what you did, you're getting punished for what you did and no one didn't know. Because all energy put out will eventually have to be dealt with. Please believe that. So you're seeing a condescending approach to empowerment now. There's nothing wrong with being the best you. There's nothing wrong with that. But if it means you have to step on somebody else, if it means you have to compromise your belief system, if it means that you must put yourself in light just for temporary gain, because keep in mind, what's at stake is your legacy, not what you possessed. Because you ain't taking that with you when you're gone. All it's doing is solidifying that little hash mark that will be on your tombstone. But we ain't talking about that. So it made me wonder, when you hear all this energy, and haven't you noticed when you see all that energy out there, it's always volatile. It's always destructive. It's always about pain. Pain is a signature that's always found there. So how are we going to get ahead as a nation if we can't get ahead as a community? But why even worry about your community if you can't even acknowledge who you are within yourself? Yes, you hear people say, well, you know, all it takes is one. I agree with that to a degree. But if you don't have a relationship with yourself first, how are you going to know what you're standing on? How are you going to know where you're headed? How are you going to know who you're giving access to? Because all those things are priceless. And all those things are not for sale. So when I saw that sign, and I saw the multitude of people, which were predominantly women, the question that I pondered was, who hurt them? Who silenced their voice? You got the same energy to walk together, but you don't have the same energy for yourself. Isn't that backwards? How can you not speak your truth if you're not willing to have a dialogue with the person in the mirror that you see every day? You're the first person you see, your reflection. You define that. And guess what? Until we're able to find comfort in ourselves, we will never come together as a people. Maybe that's the reason why there's so many guns on the streets. Because we've now adapted a position of, not only am I going to stand on it with persuasion, because, you know, that's nothing but a tool. I don't have to critically think anymore. I can do and say what I wish without any recourse. But at what price? At what price? This might be too deep for somebody, but if you're holding on to some emotional baggage, expecting somebody to come along and take that weight off of your shoulders, I'm sorry to disappoint you. It ain't happening. We all got to do our own work. And you'll notice that's what duality is all about. If you want symbolism, let's talk about this. Look at this. Let me show you something. See if I can get it. See that? This is my lighter. What do you see on there? See that? It's the yin yang. You know what that symbolizes? That is the two different perspectives of yourself intertwined together. But you notice there's no break in that? It's continuous. Because that also metaphorically can be used as your lifeline. And though there is a high and low, the only thing that separates them, which is no separation, is your knowledge. And how can you know what to value, what to sidestep, if you don't know you? So when I hear people say, no, people change, no, they don't, Gerald. Yes, they do. You ask that man that was homeless, and then one day he's a millionaire. You ask that person that was a millionaire who's homeless. It happens every day, family. And they symbolically put it in your face. Look at the symbolism in theater. What do you see? You see the two masks. One is crying, one is laughing. The symbolism is duality. The conception is the whole person. So while you're out there marching, while you're out there raising a fuss, just know there's somebody out there laughing at you. There's somebody making money off of your energy. And there's also somebody that don't care if you exist or not. That's the world we live in, family. So it made me wonder, what's the difference from being radicalized, because that's a good example of what all the protesting is about. Someone must inspire you to get you to stand up. And otherwise, the words that are conveyed would not measure. They would not resonate. They wouldn't have access to you if you knew you. Which means before you can be radicalized, you must first be brainwashed. And before you can be brainwashed, you must first not have a relationship with yourself. Now, I know there are going to be people that are going to say, well, Gerald, what's the difference between being inspired and empowered? One is growth. It's organic. Being empowered has no, it doesn't take credit. It's like planting seeds and waiting for it to take root. So there's no ownership there. There's no accountability there. That's why I was very surprised when they put a face behind the Me Too movement. You had so many people stand up. Yeah, I can relate. But why does it take one to motivate some? Why? Hmm? Because you're going to have to roll your sleeves up. And then if that was really some weight, we can go back to the inauguration. And they were out there. You can also look at the Women's March. Had all the coverage in the world. But the real question I would like to ask, I wish someone would have said, would you still be out there with those signs if you had an opportunity to be happy? You know how you see the commercial for the colleges that says, stand up if you've done this and represent that and represent. When is somebody going to represent them? When is somebody going to say, stand up because this is a day that you're going to finally actually love yourself? Stand up if this is the day that you're going to stop running from what's in you. Stand up. This is the day that you're going to finally have the courage to take that emotional backpack off and look at the pain that you've been carrying half your existence. When are we going to have that conversation? What about that? Does that not matter? Does that not matter? Because it seems like we are socially demarginalizing the things that matter. And keep in mind, everything that we neglect to do becomes the tools that our children will embrace. And that's why, if you think back when you was a child, it was something that you saw that said, I want to be just like them. That's why you got so many entertainers out there with so much influence in your daughter, in your son. And you're wondering, well, Johnny wasn't like that. Where'd that come from? When's the last time you decided to invest in having a conversation? Get to know them. Because I'm going to tell you what, as long as you choose to not invest, you're just giving more footing, more opportunity for someone to come around like a thief in the night to change the perspective that should be protected. So that is why in a town near you, in a city near you, in a state near you, there's so much reckless abandonment going on. You know what I'm talking about. Why is it where you live at, in the highways and byways, in the common streets, people drive like they lost their everlasting mind? There's no common respect no more. Why? Because they think because I got that persuader in that glove box, now this is the first time that I feel that I'm alive. But that's temporary too. That's temporary too. Ain't it kind of ironic? All of a sudden, they open the floodgates. Everybody's got a concealed carry license now. Is that coincidence? I don't think so. Because you'll never see a 1 million person caretaker march. You'll never see a 1 million person organ donation march. You'll never see that. Why? Because they're making hand over fist off of your insecurity. That's why the celebrities tell you, I'm not your role model. Your parents are. And then you wonder why Sarah Lynn is doing things behind closed doors, putting on a mask for you, but having a mask to the world. Just something to think about, man. But guess what? And I'm going to bring this home. Because when you see it, you can say, well, you know what? He liked to talk a lot, But even back then, he was right. All the energy that's going on right now, because there's a lot of people right now that think they winning. They think they winning. 8 years comes by quick. And just as much investment was done, just as much divesting will be. I had a conversation with somebody. I'm going to wrap this up. It's not coincidental that you're seeing all the gentrification going on in your communities now. You notice how there's so many pop-up storage units nowadays? And then in the same breath, you've got these mega apartment complexes being thrown up. And usually these are areas where at one time they were dilapidated. Of course, they squeezed a dollar out of 15 cents. And once they got it, they said, well, you know what? This is business. We're going to raise up the property value up here for the taxes. And if you can't swim, you got to go. And them same historical areas don't look like home no more, now do it. But listen, this is also a moniker to keep this in mind. Because you notice you ain't hearing nothing about the housing market no more. They're slowing down on that, family. And they say, you know what? Why build a subdivision when I can turn around and throw up these apartment communities, still charge the same price point as you would in your mortgage, but I'll have, instead of one family, I'll have 60. And you know what's crazy about that? They will hold on to that angle for at least 30 years. And you know what's going to happen in 30 years? The price point will still go up, but the value will go down. And eventually what happens, those stellar communities that are gated will be your projects. That is what the cycle of gentrification is all about. Somebody is going to profit off of your insecurity if you do not protect it. So be the best you, family. Have that conversation with yourself. Doesn't mean that you're crazy. It's crazy that you're not. And as I've always said, depression is real, family. It is. It is a stair step of the mental mindset that erodes your moral fiber from the inside and out. Don't worry about the people that are walking with you now. Don't worry about them. Because if they meant to be in your life, they'll be there. And maybe you may be in a scenario where they ain't there now. And they have gotten out of your way so you can find you. Because at the end of the day, we all have to do our work. Because it is about protecting your legacy. I would love to hear from you. Stay grounded. Place them first. Speak your truth. And as I always say, God's praying for you. And for that, it helps me discern mine. So don't allow someone to inspire you and it's destructive because they never had your best agenda to begin with. It was theirs. Be blessed.